Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Nathan, and today I'm reviewing this 2011 Mazda 5, which actually in some markets is known as the Mazda Primacy. And this actually just happens to be the third and final generation of the Mazda 5, so I'm going to see if it's as good as we remember it. Starting off with the exterior styling of this GX trim I have here today, this Mazda, from the front at least, it looks like my mom's 2010 Mazda 3, especially with this copper red color, which I absolutely adore. But nonetheless, though, there is pretty much the regular stuff you would get with the Mazda. No shortage of projector headlamps for sure. But down below, because this is the base model, you do not get fog lamps. But nonetheless, though, it looks like a very happy Mazda of this time period, and I quite like it for that. From the side, this Mazda 5 does not look like your stereotypical minivan, and that's because it's only about 15 feet in length. Now, you compare that to the Toyota Sienna of this era, which is only about 17 feet. You actually notice it quite a bit, especially in the back end there. I do love the way it looks, at least from the side here. You do have these nice body lines that run all the way from the front fender all the way to the back. It's sort of one of those things you have to see to actually believe. I do think it really adds a lot of depth and character to the vehicle. Now, down here, you do have your 16-inch alloy wheels. And then, of course, because this is the GX model, you don't get color-matched side mirrors. You get these black gloss ones, which I think is okay. That's pretty much it to mention, so let's go check out the back. At the back of the Mazda 5, it doesn't look like your stereotypical minivan, at least what I would think so, especially here with these taillights, because it almost looks like a Mazda 3. At least that's what they had in a lot of other vehicles of this era. And not to mention that you do sort of have a little bit of a spoiler. It doesn't really stick out all that much. But one thing that's odd, besides not having a dual exhaust here, or at least a twin exhaust, is the fact that your radio antenna is mounted off to one side and not center of the vehicle. Sitting in this Mazda 5 actually reminds me of my mom's old Mazda 3, which you're probably going to hear me say a lot during this video, so just a heads up, I do apologize. But that's not a bad thing, because the quality of that 2010 Mazda 3 and this Mazda 5 are very similar, and it's a very good thing, so take it as you will. Everything seems familiar, at least the steering wheel seems very much the same, the vinyl wrap steering wheel, which with this model, because it's a GX, doesn't come with the cruise control and doesn't come with Bluetooth, so you just have your radio controls here on the left hand side. But a couple weird things about this trim is the fact that it is the base model. You do get things like you get rain sensing wipers, you get automatic headlights, and you get single zone automatic climate control, but for some reason they won't give you cruise control. I don't know. So there's a couple other things that's kind of the same here that's very much like the Mazda 3, my mom's old car. With the dials here, you have these sort of like looking eyes piercing right at you with your tachometer and your speedometer on the right hand side. And then over here on the driver door here, you do have this cloth material. And again, there's no soft touch plastics here. And even here on the dash, there's no soft touch anywheres. I mean, it is a Mazda of this era, so you're not going to find it. But you do have pretty much all this hard material right here on the door, including your switches. And then down here, you do have two 12-volt power outlets, which is quite nice. And then you have your cup holder. And then you do have like a little storage open tray right here that you can put things in. And then either on the side of the seats here, you do have your folding armrest. Now, shifter here is exactly the same as it would be in the Mazda 3, which is, you know, that vinyl sort of cheap material, which is, again, not horrible. I've definitely had a lot worse. But yeah, there is a couple other extras here that you wouldn't get in like something like the Mazda 3. You'd actually get vents that can actually close in the center, which you can't get on the Mazda 3, at least in the second generation of Mazda 3. And like the other Mazdas I've reviewed in the past, I always check the glove box to see if there's a light. And unfortunately, there's none. Now, if this was the top model, you would get things like leather seating and also a sunroof. And not to mention, you could probably get some other little doodads in there as well. But this one being the absolute base model, I'm actually surprised for what you get. Now, a lot of you that want a minivan, you're probably thinking, okay, practical storage, what is there, especially here at the front end? Well, there's not a whole lot. You do have the little open cubby right here, just between the two front seats. And then right up here by the shifter, you do have a little slot, maybe fit your wallet or some change. And then one small little slot right here where you can put some small stuff in there as well. And not to mention, you do have this little sort of cutout opening right here above the glove box. But that's really it. There's just no huge, you know, this is not a Toyota Echo, basically. This is not a vehicle that would have lots of storage like that car did. But nonetheless, though, I do think that they did okay here for the amount of size that this vehicle is. Now, this is not your stereotypical minivan where you have loads of seating. It's actually only a 6-seater, and that's because you have these two captain's chairs right here. And I believe it's just due to something like regulations back when this vehicle came out, especially in the United States, which only made it so you can only have 2 up here and then 2 in the back. Now, that's not a bad thing because they are quite nice. You can actually do a lot of things here. You can recline the chairs quite a bit. And then not to mention, you do have an armrest on either side. Now, another cool bonus thing here is that you do have storage underneath the seats. And then when you fold them down flat, you can actually fit longer items coming through the cargo area. Now, there's not a whole lot to brag about in terms of amenities back here because, well, there is none really. You do have a dome light, which is independent from the front, and then you do have these vents down here, which is kind of unique that you don't even get like an actual temperature control, so it actually just blows air. So it's just blowing constant air, whether it's just lukewarm or, I don't know, can air be lukewarm? I don't know. Anyways, you have air that comes through those vents. It works. That's what matters. But you don't get cup holders back here. You have a mat pocket on the rear passenger seat, which is very typical of Mazda. Did do that in all their vehicles, but it's really all there is. So let's go check out the third row now and see if there's any noteworthy items back there. Now, getting into the third and final row as an adult is always fun because you never know if you ever get out. And to be perfectly honest, with these seats in their current position, there's no way I can even fit my feet back here, and nor am I even going to try to do that because, I'll be trapped here forever. But nonetheless, though, sitting in this row, if you are a small child, I feel like you'd be pretty content. At least you do have a cup holder, which you are lacking in the second row. There is no dome light back here. You do have adjustable headrests to keep you somewhat comfortable on a long distance trip. But in terms of overall space, again, if you are the tiny size of human, then you can fit back here. But otherwise, forget about it. You're not going to fit back here unless you move these seats forward just enough to snug your feet in. And even then, it's going to be a hard time getting them out. So with that being said, let's go check out the rear trunk area to see what's back there. To get in the cargo space of the Mazda 5, there's no power liftgate option, unfortunately, but at least that's kind of a blessing because if you think about it, it's one less thing to fail. So unfortunately, you just have to press this button here and then lift the hatch, and then you're in. Now, cargo space wise, with this third row upright, there's not a lot of space, but if you do pull these little tethers on the back of the seats and fold them down, you have loads of space. And even when you fold down that second row, you even have acres of room there for do whatever you want. Now, in terms of amenities back here, there's not a whole lot to mention. You do have a little storage tray in here with your tools, and then underneath that you do have your donut spare tire. And then over on the left hand side here you do have a 12-volt power outlet, and then stowed away is your jack for the vehicle. Now on the right side here you do have a little light here which you can toggle on and off, and then a little storage cubby in there as well. Now I think it's time to get this thing out on the road and see if it performs like a Mazda. Driving this Mazda 5 brings back a lot of familiar things, and that of course is the way it handles. Out here on the road, despite the fact that this vehicle has almost 200,000 kilometers, it still drives pretty well. And not to mention that the engine in this vehicle, which was the exact same one that was in my mom's 2010 Mazda 3, is also a 2.5 liter gasoline naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, which makes 157 horsepower and 167 pound-feet of torque. I absolutely adore it. It's always got a little bit of pep, especially off the line. You really feel it, and there's no turbo lag, no nothing, because it doesn't have a turbo. It just has that instant juice that you need to get where you need to go. Now, going up hills on the highway, all that kind of stuff, it does lack a little bit of power. Now, that comes naturally with a lot of these vehicles. They tend to lack a bit of that power. Now, driving on the highway, this vehicle is not super quick. I mean, it's quick in the sense that, you know, off the line, but other than that, though, when you need that passing power, it doesn't quite cut it. Fuel economy in the Mazda 5 is not all that bad. You do get a combined city highway of 10.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which is about 23 miles per gallon. In terms of transmission choices with this vehicle, you had two options. You had the 6-speed manual transmission for those die-hard enthusiasts, and then also a 5-speed automatic, which is what is in this vehicle here today. Now, I quite like the automatic in this vehicle. Usually I complain about automatics, especially older ones, in a lot of vehicles like this, but this one's actually pretty decent. It even comes with a manual mode, so if you want to shift it manually through the Triptronic, you can definitely do that. Now, one point I always bring up whenever I do car reviews on Mazda specifically is the road noise. Don't ask me why I do it, but I do. However, today, the Mazda 5 is actually relatively quiet for a Mazda, and that's actually surprising because usually, at least the Mazda 3 that I drove, both my personal one, the 2018, and also the 2010, they were both considerably louder than this one. Now, I'm out here on the highway going about 80 kilometers, and I can actually hear myself think. I don't have to be drawn out by the road noise from tires or anything else. It's actually pretty good for once. You know, I really love Mazda this era. I do feel like this was probably one of the best generations of Mazda, if you ask me. You know, despite having some control from Ford, I feel like Mazda was still making a very impactful thing on the market, especially with vehicles like this. Now, despite the fact that there was a lot of competition for minivans, I do feel like the Mazda 5, especially for people that actually like to drive a regular car, chose this over, let's say, a Toyota Sienna or a Honda Odyssey. You know, it's kind of sad that Mazda decided to stop making these vehicles. I mean, obviously they shifted focus in the mid-2010s to more crossovers and more upscale in their market, meaning the luxury cars. Now, this vehicle had gone from 2010 to 2018, which is pretty long if you ask me, at least this generation of the Mazda 5. And I'm quite surprised that, you know, it's still around today. You still see a lot of these on the road, and that people love them, they swear by them. And I think that has something to do with the quality Mazda had put out in that era. And not to mention that although you did have many choices of different other minivans or MPVs, so to speak, I think this would be the one I really gravitate more towards if I had to choose. This is not your stereotypical minivan. This is a Mazda of what I think was the best era of Mazdas. A time when they were not trying to keep up with the Joneses and competing upmarket, but a time when they actually listened to their buyers and gave them what they wanted. And what they wanted was something maybe not exactly like a minivan, but something close, but gives you a little bit of the fun behind the wheel. And this is what you got, a Mazda 5. Now, is this vehicle perfect in every single way? No. Is it the most spacious minivan on the planet? No. But does it blend everything pretty well? Yes, it does. And that's what this vehicle was meant to be. It's supposed to take all that characteristics of being practical, fun to drive, and putting them in the blender and hitting pulse. And that's what you got. Something like this. And if you're looking for a minivan, and that's something that comes with either a 6-speed manual or even an automatic, and you want something that's good on gas and that is somewhat practical in your daily life, I would definitely consider this vehicle right here. So if you're in the market for a minivan or MPV, as this one's referred to as, I would definitely consider the Mazda 5, as it pretty much just ticks all the boxes, at least in terms of being somewhat practical and fun to drive and a little bit fuel efficient in there as well. But nonetheless, so I do think you should definitely consider the Mazda 5. And if you do find one, you can typically find one here in Canada, where I live, for about maybe $5,000 to $8,000 for a really good one. With all that being said, I want to say thank you very much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future videos like this and other car reviews and car projects on my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye now.